Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful parable from our source text. It's about a figure called the Forerunner, and his story is going to make us look at two very different kinds of strength, and really, what it means to have true power. Okay, so let's get right into it with this big question. When you think of the greatest expression of power, what comes to mind? Is it asserting your own greatness, your own authority? Or could it be something more profound, something a whole lot harder to do? So, in this story, the Forerunner is introduced as a master of what the text calls two distinct arts of power. The first one, well, it's a kind of force we all recognize, one that tears things down. But the second one is way more difficult. It's a force that builds things up, but in a way you'd never expect. Let's start with that first art, the one that's more direct and, honestly, more aggressive, the art of contempt. Now, hang on, this isn't about petty insults or being a jerk. The parable actually frames this as a necessary tool, almost like a cleansing fire.
Yeah, look at this definition here. What's so interesting is its purpose. The Forerunner's contempt wasn't just blind anger. It was a weapon he used with absolute precision to shatter illusions, to break down all these comfortable but totally false ideas, and basically to clear the ground so something new could grow.
And wow, he used some seriously powerful language to do it, calling out the establishment as a brood of vipers. See, he wasn't just trying to be provocative for the sake of it. He was establishing his own authority, not through some old tradition or family line, but through a direct, challenging, and uncomfortable truth. And this table really lays out the contrast perfectly. Contempt is the hammer, right? It breaks things down. It's necessary, for sure, but it's not the final goal. Because as you can see, there's this higher, much more difficult art that actually builds, and that is the art of homage. So that brings us to the second, and according to this text, the more profound art, homage. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Now, this right here is the absolute key to understanding the whole parable. Homage, in this story, has nothing to do with being weak or servile. It's actually about having the strength, the wisdom, the incredible clarity of vision to recognize true greatness when you see it. So, the Forerunner had obviously mastered contempt. His words could shake the very foundations of his society. But his true mastery, his greatest act of all, is revealed in how he used this second art of homage. I mean, just think about this for a second. The guy commanded a massive following. His voice had an authority that no priest could even touch. And yet, when the crowd started looking at him like he was the leader they'd been waiting for, he knew, with the certainty of the desert sun, that he was not the one. And this famous phrase, this is what illustrates his choice so brilliantly. It doesn't sound like a statement of weakness at all when you think about it this way. In the context of this parable, this sentence holds the entire key to his real power. It's a deliberate choice, an act of will. What's so fascinating is how this story just completely reframes that quote for us. This wasn't him admitting defeat. Nope. Instead, it's presented as his most masterful expression of strength, the power to see the truth clearly and act on it, even when it meant lowering his own status. You see, he was actively making himself into a vessel for something bigger. He saw a more powerful will coming over the horizon, something that would baptize with spirit and fire. And instead of trying to compete with it, he chose to be the very first person to recognize it and honor it. Now that is presented as the ultimate act of a strong will. But, how do we know this lesson really stuck? The final proof isn't just in what he said, it's in what his own followers did next. Let's see how this all builds to its really powerful conclusion. Now, on the surface, this looks like a huge betrayal, right? His closest, most loyal followers just up and leave him for someone else. But the parable presents this exact moment as the Forerunner's greatest success. This here maps out their whole journey, and it's the final proof that his teaching worked. First, they learned contempt from him, sure. But more importantly, he taught them that incredibly difficult art of homage. So when he pointed to something greater, them leaving wasn't disloyalty. It was the ultimate expression of the very lesson he had been teaching them all along. They had truly learned the central lesson, the arts of homage. They understood how to spot a greater will and then get out of the way. Their teacher taught them so well that they knew to leave the messenger for the source of the message. And this is why his true legacy wasn't the powerful scorn he started with. That was just the groundwork, the necessary demolition. His truly great contribution was teaching this difficult, powerful reverence that's required to recognize and follow something genuinely new. And just like that, the parable brings us back and answers our opening question by completely redefining what the ultimate act of will even is. It's not about asserting yourself. It's about the clear-sighted, powerful recognition of a will that is greater than your own. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This parable is about a specific historical figure, but the principle itself is universal. So the real question for us is, in our own lives, in our work, in our ambitions, when is it a greater act of power not to push ourselves forward, but to willingly decrease so that something more important can increase?